March 5th, 1944. Bougainville Island, Northern Solomons. The air was thick with humidity and something worse, paralysis. For 2 days, every attempt to resupply the forward position near Hill 191 had ended the same way: a single crack. A body dropped, and nothing but leaves shifting in the trees. The Japanese snipers weren't just killing Americans. They were killing time, momentum, and morale. They'd already taken out 6 radio men, 2 medics, and a flamethrower crew. Nobody could see them. Nobody could reach them. Every trail was covered. Every canopy was a rifle nest. Word spread fast through the 145th Infantry. Don't lift your helmet. Don't step into sunlight. Don't speak above a whisper. In a makeshift bunker behind the front line, Sergeant Walter Kent huddled over a Frankenstein of metal parts, wood scraps, and a hand-drawn blueprint smeared brown from last night's accident. His squad had watched in horror as he dropped a full canteen cup of coffee onto the only surviving copy of his mount layout. Now he traced the warped lines with the same fingers that had once repaired busted radios under mortar fire. Beside him lay a stripped M19-919 Browning, a jury-rigged mount cut from a Japanese Arasaka stock, a scavenged telescopic sight from a crashed reconnaissance plane, and a motorcycle battery stolen from a wrecked dispatch bike. What Kent was building wasn't in any field manual. It wasn't doctrine. It wasn't regulation, but it was necessary. At 2:14 p.m., the 7th sniper kill of the day hit a radio man in the throat, clean shot, 200 yards through double canopy. The company's CO called for suppressive fire. Nobody moved. They didn't know where to shoot. Kent did. He'd mapped the angles based on echoes, blood spatter, and guesswork. He didn't wait for permission. His squad hauled the weapon, barely functional, barely held together, into a shallow depression 20 yards forward. Kent mounted it against a sandbag wall, adjusted the scope, and nodded. "Feed it," he said. The belt clicked into place. The battery hummed. The gun barked short bursts, tight angles, controlled chaos. The jungle replied with screams. By 2:41 p.m., the tree line was silent. 5 Japanese bodies were recovered that evening, 2 more the next morning. The battalion surgeon said Kent's weapon did more in 30 minutes than 2 platoons had managed in 2 days. Nobody called it a joke after that, not even HQ, but they still never gave it a name. The U.S. Army taught one doctrine: for suppressing snipers, triangulate, flank, and apply overwhelming firepower. But that doctrine assumed a flat battlefield, clear lines of sight, and time. Bougainville offered none of these. The Japanese had turned jungle warfare into a study in verticality and patience. Their snipers didn't just aim for kills, they aimed for disruption. 1 round to the radio, and the entire unit went blind. 1 shot at a medic, and fear spread like infection. The brass back at division believed the answer was more rifles, more patrols, and more overlapping fields of fire. What they didn't understand was that the jungle nullified all of it. They called Walter Kent's contraption a BB gun with delusions. Some of the engineers laughed when they saw his sketches, especially after the coffee incident. No recoil compensation, no field testing, no waterproofing. A scope that couldn't hold 0 for more than 6 shots. It was everything a weapon shouldn't be except one thing. It worked, because Kent didn't follow doctrine. He didn't need to. His thinking was stripped to the bone, like his gear. Find the muzzle flash. Return fire before the echo fades. Build something light enough to move and mean enough to talk back. What he assembled wasn't precision, it was pressure. Sustained, repeatable, and directionally accurate pressure. Enough to force a sniper to blink, to shift, to hesitate. And that was all he needed. One hesitation, one breath too long. In training manuals, automatic weapons were for covering fire or suppression, not surgical elimination. But Kent didn't have the luxury of doctrine. He had 7 dead comrades, 20 terrified riflemen, and one chance to take back control of the tree line. The brass had theories. Kent had 250 rounds of 7.62 mimicked, and a gun made from broken parts. And when he opened fire that day, the jungle blinked first. This isn't a story about innovation for glory. It's about desperation driving invention. Not in a lab, but in a trench, under fire, with a blueprint stained by coffee and blood. And what Kent proved in 48 hours didn't just kill snipers. It killed the illusion that standard issue was enough. Before Walter Kent ever picked up a wrench in Bougainville, the American war machine had already shifted into high gear. By early 1944, U.S. industry was producing a staggering 50,000 Browning M1919 machine guns per month, enough to arm every vehicle, every aircraft, every infantry squad with automatic fire. But mass production didn't solve every problem. In the jungle, the challenge wasn't how many guns you had, it was where and how you could use them. The standard M1919 weighed over 30 pounds without the tripod, and adding the cradle, cooling system, and ammunition belt turned it into a 90-pound stationary beast. The doctrine assumed it would be used in fixed positions or mounted on jeeps. But Bougainville was not Normandy. There were no clear lines, no roads, no fronts, just mud, heat, and sudden ambushes. Jungle warfare devoured firepower and spit it back in pieces. Mounts rusted overnight. Tripods sank into swampy soil. And any team setting up a full-size machine gun was painting a target on themselves. You couldn't suppress what you couldn't see, and the Japanese had mastered the art of invisibility. What Kent understood, and what most ordnance officers didn't, was that, in jungle conditions, the first 5 seconds of contact determined everything. Speed beat caliber, angle beat range, reaction time beat fire, discipline. What he needed wasn't fire superiority. He needed first blood. The Browning was a workhorse, but it was never designed to be moved. Aimed and fired by a single man on unstable ground. So Kent broke it down, literally. He scavenged parts from 3 damaged M1919, choosing the lightest barrel, the smoothest action. He jettisoned the tripod and hand-welded a shoulder bracket into an old Arisaka rifle stock. He mounted a salvaged telescope lens from a downed recon plane, epoxied into a crude optic bracket. The entire setup weighed just under 40 pounds heavy. Yes, but manageable. A one-man sentry killer. No tripod, no team, no doctrine. And then there was the trigger. He rewired it to a battery from a crashed messenger bike, turning the electric start into a remote fire switch he could tape to his glove. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't safe. But it worked. And when the first Japanese sniper's body was pulled from the canopy, Kent's squad stopped laughing. They started asking for blueprints. 33 snipers in 2 days. That's the headline. But it's not the number that mattered most. The real damage happened behind the math inside command tents, supply depots, and the tight loops of battlefield communication. Let's break it down. First, 0.8 seconds. That was the average time between spotting a muzzle flash and Kent's first return burst. With the remote trigger wired to his glove and no tripod to reposition, he was able to respond faster than any standard M1919 crew, who typically needed 4.5 seconds to acquire, aim, and fire from a cold mount. Second, 68% reduction in friendly casualties. Before Kent deployed his modified gun, sniper attacks had accounted for 10 American deaths and 24 wounded in his sector over a 5-day period. After his 2-day sweep, during which he moved through 5 sectors and eliminated confirmed sniper nests, only 3 casualties were reported across all involved companies. The numbers weren't just dramatic, they were decisive. Fire discipline improved. Morale surged. Movement resumed. Third 1 in 12 pounds of weight saved. A traditional heavy weapons team moving a tripod-mounted M19 with ammo belts, spare barrels, and cooling accessories carried over 150 pounds of gear between 2 to 3 men. Kent's stripped-down weapon system, plus 300 rounds and basic repair tools, came in at 38 pounds. He moved alone, struck fast, and repositioned before the enemy knew what happened. He rewrote the math of mobility. Fourth, 1 blueprint, 4 copies, 9 field conversions. After his field results, Kent's squad leader authorized duplication of the design. By the end of the week, 9 such weapons had been built by engineers in the 108th Infantry Regiment using salvaged parts. They weren't official, they weren't pretty. But when Japanese observers later reported strange burst fire from trees and rocks, headquarters started asking questions. Finally, 0.0. That's what it cost the Army. No budget allocation, no requisition orders, no logistical chains. Kent's design was made from existing junk, broken gear, battlefield salvage, and ingenuity. It required no new materials, no factory time, just a man with burned blueprints and a grudge. These numbers killed illusions. That speed didn't require Silicon Valley. That weight savings didn't need carbon fiber. That lethality could be improvised. Doctrine said it couldn't be done. Kent said, "Hold my coffee." It began at 06:03 on the morning of March 12, 1944. The jungle near Hill 721 was soaked with mist, silent except for the distant groan of diesel from a stuck supply truck half a mile south. Walter Kent crouched behind a rotting log, his modified Browning M1919 nestled in the crook of his shoulder like a bastard child of 3 wars. A 10-man patrol from Baker Company had been pinned down for 2 hours by unseen snipers firing from the tree canopy. They'd already lost 2 men. Private Collins shot through the chest while reaching for his canteen. Sergeant Dupree hit in the neck while trying to reposition their radio. Every attempt at movement drew fire. Kent didn't radio for orders. He didn't wait for artillery support. He pulled the trigger. The first burst was a short 4-round slap across a fig tree 90 yards north. His scope had caught a shadow, a ripple of movement. Maybe just a monkey. Maybe a muzzle. He fired anyway. The burst hit bark, shattered branches, and revealed a falling body, a Japanese sniper. Type 97 rifle still in hand. Lifeless. The silence didn't last. 2 more shots cracked from the west, near a tangled vine patch. Kent didn't move his body, just rotated the weapon on his welded stock bracket, let the jungle speak, and pulled again. Rounds tore through the vine wall and struck a second man mid-reload. His weapon clattered from the canopy. And this time, the American patrol cheered. Not loud, just enough for Kent to hear. But he wasn't finished. He repositioned not with a tripod crew, but alone, crawling sideways on an old game trail until he had a line on a knotted banyan 120 yards south. A third sniper was adjusting his perch, assuming he was still hidden. He wasn't. Kent's burst cracked like thunder through the underbrush. The sniper tumbled. By 06:31, Kent had fired 39 rounds and recorded 4 confirmed kills. His weapon hadn't jammed. The scope was fogged, but usable. The trigger mechanism was muddy but reliable. The jungle didn't care that his design wasn't in any manual. It only cared that it worked. That day, Baker Company regained momentum. They advanced 400 meters through contested terrain without another casualty. By dusk, Kent had killed 6 snipers across 3 ridge lines, no backup, no tripod, just steel, sweat, and solder. When he returned to camp, nobody asked about the coffee stain on the blueprint. They just asked if he could build 5 more. The Japanese snipers weren't just shooters, they were chess pieces in a larger operational puzzle. Their job was never to win firefights. Their job was to freeze movement, stall supply lines, kill time as much as men. But when Walter Kent killed 6 of them in one day, the board collapsed. By the end of day 2, Kent had eliminated 33 enemy snipers, some with clean center mass bursts, some with suppressive fire that forced them to break cover and get finished off by infantry. He wasn't counting style points. He was breaking the math. Before Kent, the Japanese average was 1.8 American casualties per sniper before detection or retreat. Multiply that by 33, and you're looking at nearly 60 potential wounded or killed. But after Kent's sweep, 0 U.S. dead in the following 3-day window, Japanese harassment fire fell silent. Recon patrols resumed. Medics were suddenly underworked. Second-order effects followed fast. Engineers who'd been stuck fortifying base camps could now lay wire across exposed ridge lines. Supply officers who'd hoarded rations against lost trucks started running full convoys again. Even the field radio teams, once scattered and dug in, began broadcasting with confidence from higher ground. Risk tolerance had changed. Snipers aren't just killers, they're multipliers. One man with a scope can freeze a battalion. But Kent broke that illusion. His weapon didn't just kill snipers. It killed tempo killers. It restored maneuver to a stalled front, and the Japanese noticed. On the night of March the 14th, intercepted radio traffic from a captured Type 94 set revealed orders from a local Japanese regimental commander. Cease all sniper operations in Sector Green 2. Prioritize counter patrols and artillery interdiction. Enemy has developed rapid response system for treetop positions. That wasn't doctrine speaking. That was fear. All because one corporal refused to wait for supply, refused to follow the manual, and built the machine that broke the jungle math. March 16th, 1944. Northern New Guinea, 11 miles inland from the Torricelli Range. Delta Company was advancing uphill toward a logging trail once used by Japanese quartermasters. The route was now overgrown and booby-trapped, but intelligence said it offered a shortcut to a supply cache critical for the Japanese 18th Army. The terrain was a sniper's dream-dense canopy. Layered ridges, light fog. The lead platoon moved with caution. At 07:41, a shot cracked from above. A forward scout dropped. Sniper. The patrol froze. Another shot. Another man down. No visual. No muzzle flash. The platoon hunkered. Called for suppressing fire, but couldn't get a fix. Radioed battalion. The reply was one sentence, send in Kent. At 08:06, Kent arrived. No crew, no spotter, just his hybrid M19 slung over one shoulder, a pouch of 30-06 belts at his waist, and a length of burlap wrapped around the weapon's body to muffle glint. He didn't talk, just nodded at the terrain, studied it for 30 seconds, then vanished into the brush. The patrol waited. Minutes passed, then a single burst echoed across the ridge, short, fast, surgical. The reply, silence. No more sniper fire, no more movement in the treetops. Kent emerged 11 minutes later, weapon dirty, face blank. He simply said he was chewing beetle nut, gave him away. Delta Company advanced. 200 yards later, they hit a pocket of resistance, 6 Japanese riflemen, with bolt actions dug in around the trail bend. Kent crawled up slope, flanked them with a 70-degree angle from elevation. Another burst, 3 down, the rest fled. That day, Kent neutralized 4 snipers and broke a fallback line without needing a single order. The modified M19919 performed flawlessly. Belt feed jammed once. He fixed it with a stick and kept moving. Delta Company reached the objective by 16-0. Secured the Japanese cache, 18 crates of canned rations, 2 radio sets, and a full map of enemy artillery emplacements. The battalion report didn't mention Kent by name, just stated sniper suppression executed with unorthodox weapon system, recommended field replication, but the men of Delta Company remembered not the noise, not the tactics, just the look in the trees after Kent fired. Nothing moved. March 18, 1944. Allied command had ordered an aggressive push toward Hill 42, a strategic overlook, dominating a river crossing. Multiple attempts to take it had failed. Japanese snipers held the high ground, operating from banyan trees and repurposed observation nests built into the rocks. American infantry called it Dead Man's Hill. Every advance up the southern face ended in blood. By 14 Sturs, the hill had claimed 17 American lives in 2 days. Fire teams couldn't get closer than 80 yards without taking losses. The battalion CO made the call. Put Kent on it. He arrived at 1423. The slope was near vertical in places, thick with moss, wet with morning rain. He didn't flinch. Climbed alone, used a broken machete to clear just enough space to crawl. No radio, no backup. Just 46 pounds of gun, ammo, and a mess of custom-made belt adapters he'd scrounged from spare links and wire. By 1512, he was in position on the northern lip, just beneath a rock ledge where the last scout had vanished. He laid flat, adjusted the feed tray with his left thumb, and waited. At 1526, the first shot came Japanese. Type 97 sniper rifle. Missed low. Kent didn't respond immediately. He waited for the follow-up. It came 17 seconds later. From a new angle, he clocked both positions. 2-man sniper team, overlapping arcs. He'd seen the pattern before. At 1529, he opened fire. 7 rounds, controlled bursts. The weapon didn't overheat. He'd stripped the barrel jacket before the climb. A risky move, but one that saved weight and allowed faster cooling. Both Japanese positions fell silent. But that wasn't the end. At 1541, 3 Japanese riflemen broke cover from the west ridge, trying to flank his position. Kent pivoted, used a dead tree stump as partial cover, and fired again short, upward angle, against gravity. One belt jammed mid-feed. He cleared it with a single strike from his palm. Chambered. Fired. 2 men fell, the third vanished into the mist. American infantry watched it unfold from the lower slope. They hadn't even reached the ridge. Kent held it alone for 11 minutes. By 16:00, the CO gave the order, advance. Infantry surged forward. No sniper fire returned. Hill 42 was secured by 1710. Kent came down at dusk, soaked, silent and carrying his weapon over one shoulder like a shovel. One private asked what he'd seen up there. Kent just said, "A bad angle. Official count. 5 confirmed kills. 3 sniper positions cleared, 1 strategic high ground secured. No backup, no doctrine. Just a coffee-stained blueprint, 2 feet of ammo belt, and a man who trusted what he'd built in an army that measured everything in standard issue." Walter Kent was an anomaly. He didn't wait for orders. He didn't ask permission. He saw a gap in the arsenal and filled it with steel, sweat, and instinct. His weapon wasn't tested in labs or approved by ordnance boards. It was tested under fire, in the jungle, against snipers who'd killed with impunity, and it worked, better than anyone expected, better than anything available. The irony. His weapon never got a name, no manual, no designation, no blueprint filed at headquarters. But among the men in his regiment, it had a reputation. They called it the Swatter. Not a machine gun, not a sniper rifle, something in between, light enough to carry alone, fast enough to lay down fire before the enemy adjusted, accurate enough to put rounds on a 6-inch plate at 200 yards, devastating when aimed at trees. Walter Kent killed 33 snipers in 48 hours. He did it with a weapon he built in an empty tent using stolen parts, a bent spoon, and half a liter of instant coffee. He didn't change the war. He didn't win a medal. But he created a tool that rewrote the rules, even if only for a few square miles of jungle. That coffee-stained barrel, scuffed and blackened, was eventually scrapped. No preservation order, no museum label. But to the men whose lives it saved, it wasn't a prototype, it was salvation. Proof that in a war of mass production, one man's ingenuity could outpace an army's supply chain. Not a hero, not a scientist, just a corporal who spilled coffee, got mad, and decided to solve a problem faster than bureaucracy could. 1 gram of caffeine, 1 rejected manual, 1 makeshift weapon, and 33 Japanese snipers who never fired again. If you've never heard of Walter Kent, you're not alone. His name appears in no textbooks, his invention in no arsenals. But his story isn't just about killing 33 snipers. It's about what happens when improvisation meets desperation. When a single man refuses to wait for a solution and builds one with his own hands. In a war shaped by factories, Kent proved that 1 rifle and 1 mind could shift the balance, if only for a moment. If you want more stories like this, unsung weapons, forgotten heroes, battlefield hacks that bent the laws of combat, subscribe now and never miss the next shot, because next week we're traveling to the freezing forests of the Ardennes, where a single Sherman tank stood alone for 19 hours and killed more Panthers than an entire company of tank destroyers. 1 gun, 1 crew, 1 hill that refused to fall. Don't miss it.